Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to I was going to say Friday night, but technically Thursday night, July 4th out here. Sounds like a Friday night out here in Northern California. A lot of people blasting off fireworks out here. Happy 4th of July. About 10:47 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 3.8 around the Philippines area. Let's go ahead and check out what's going on up here in the Pacific Northwest and just off the coast here of the Canadian coastline. Got some earthquake activity stirring up here in a swarm fashion. The latest one shows a 2.1 over here on the Washington area. Now, of course, we've been watching this area pretty closely here. It is in a zone that, of course, built up a lot of strain here and eventually will build up enough strain for a mega quake earthquake here along the Cascadia. Pretty decent amount of swarming going on here. The last area, at least far as on the map goes, a 4.4 here into the Wandufuka Ridge. This is a divergent boundary here. About 10 kilometers defaulted depth here for this earthquake. So just continue to keep an eye on that. Let's check out Tremor map here tonight. Let's see what we got here. Surprisingly, right, with this divergent boundary activity occurring offshore, we did see some elevated activity out here where I expected it to take place. Remember, I was telling you guys this morning during the update, watch for uptick in tremor here, specifically across this range here of the northern end. And what do you know? There it is, right? So when you get this activity in the spreading seafloor center here, divergent zone, that adds further strain out here across the Cascadia subduction zone, and we're seeing elevated tremor occur right about in this zone right here, as you can see on the map. So goodness, that's about as solid information as you can provide right there when it comes to almost immediate effects from that activity offshore today. A little bit down there in southern Oregon or western, I don't want to say southern Oregon. A lot of people. Southern Oregon is, out here in this area, but along the coastline here of Oregon, southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, showing some activity as well. But goodness, look at that. And it hasn't been like that over the past week. If you go back the last week or so, most of the activity has been down here at the southern end. It's only notable today that we've seen this increasing activity here, and that is due strictly because of this activity right here. Putting a strain here, as expected, because this is a separation here of the seafloor. You see these ridges going on? When you get earthquake activity out here, this spreads out slowly, but also at the same time applies pressure out here against this region. And we're seeing elevated tremor down dip here into the Cascadia. Watch this region potentially for some further earthquake activity upstream. Even though we haven't seen it, maybe seen a little sign up here across the Washington area right now, but we'll definitely keep an eye on this area here over the next couple days because the tremor, obviously the tremor doesn't lie. That is due pretty much east here of where we're seeing that elevated earthquake activity offshore. All right, let's see what we got here elsewhere. California, anything going on down here across Northern California? Pretty quiet, not a whole lot going on. Southern California, a little bit of movement right smack dab on. Oh, man, that's somewhere where we don't want to see, right? The southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault. Goodness. Got a handful of earthquakes out here, 2.0, and a couple other one-pointers out here near the Highland area. You can see it's right at the base of these mountain ranges, which is the base, or which is the plate boundary here, the San Andreas Fault. Southern end of it. Nothing big going on there, but, one day we'll be talking about a big one that takes place here, 8.0 or greater. Out here across this area, it's coming. That's a fact. We can't deny it. We can try to ignore it, but the fact is that this area is very capable of producing an 8.1. There's so much strain built up out here; it's unbelievable. And eventually, that will make headline news around the world. Trust me, I won't be the only one here talking about it. But for now, a little bit of earthquake activity, specifically right on the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. Up here around the Pasadena area, 1.5. Altadena area, looks like 18 kilometers deep. A couple different thrust faults that run up here south of these mountain ranges. Aside from that, hard to say. there was actually a map put out here recently on social media showing earthquake activity out here in the Los Angeles area, but some of that could be because of earthquake or firework activity. These fireworks, at least here in Northern California, have been shaking the windows out here, and they're actually banned all throughout Butte County here. We're not supposed to have any fireworks, safe and sane, or obviously any illegal ones either. And well, that doesn't stop people from celebrating America's birthday here. So happy 4th of July. Me, myself, and I, we abided by the rules out here, and I had a barbecue instead. But a little bit of earthquake activity out here, and hard to say if that's going to be. I don't think those are fireworks out there showing on the map here, but it's a broader scale earthquake activity out there in the Los Angeles area today. And as far as the rest of Southern California goes, as you can see, a little bit of movement off the Elsinore Fault way down here. Very small earthquake activity in the 2 and 1 range. Rest of the country out here, as you can see, fairly quiet. Yellowstone National Park, zip, zero, nada. But let's just double check there. There's that earthquake there in the off the Canadian coast. Okay. That was E5.7. Showed up pretty nicely there earlier this morning. Produced a significant signature there. Aside from that, I don't see any earthquake activity there across Yellowstone. Looks pretty quiet. Some wind events earlier across Lake Butte and the Promontory area, Moose Creek area as well, Hawks Rest. Some wind. That's about it. Crazy to think that wind shows up out here, right? Well, it does. All right, the Big Island of Hawaii. Let's take a look here. Got an update here from Timothy, the moderator here on this channel. He's been in contact here with a geologist there that monitors the data out there, the inflation data and whatnot in terms of technical data. And they said they made some type of adjustment out here intentionally. And it's to monitor the data more sufficiently. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. The deformation data here. Okay, so it's possible. Maybe they know what they're talking about, hopefully. But you can see this obvious change here on the past week, right? Look at the thickness here of the graph. Notice the increasing activity as we go back prior to the adjustment. Since the adjustment right here in the deformation data, it's been, I don't know. It's been kind of odd is the key word here. But apparently they did this intentionally to monitor the data more sufficiently. But I don't know if this monitors it more sufficiently or not, because it looks like it levels it out more and gets rid of all the obvious inflation levels up and down and whatnot. So, yeah. Either way, it does look like we're going up in terms of inflation still. And we'll just have to go with this because I'm not in control of it. I can't tell this guy what to do with the data. I'm not in charge of anything out here with the USGS in terms of monitoring the data out here in terms of inflation. So we'll have to go with what they give us. The key is to watching earthquake activity. Even if they did away with all this, we could still monitor the earthquake activity and make a decisive decision from there. Because obviously elevated earthquake activity is going to be indicative of pressurization and potential magma movement out here. So we do have, as we've seen on the chart there, some elevated inflation. Tilt meters out here specifically in this area have been somewhat heightened out there since about the end of June. The seismograph stations out here, let's see what we got. Let me zoom in here to the Upper East Rift Zone. The USGS did put out a little update here on their social media page. I shared it on my Facebook page about the elevated earthquake activity here across the Upper East Rift Zone. Right now, pretty quiet. There's only a few earthquakes out here on the graph, but they did note the elevated earthquake swarm that began a week or so ago in this area. Let me bring back the I want to bring back the last 30 days of earthquake activity out here, and most of it has been clustered, as you can see, along the Upper East Rift Zone. And there's actually some old fracture zones out here from 1973 and some previous intrusion and eruptive events. So we can see an eruption out here. that's not out of the ordinary, I guess, right? We've seen eruptions out here in 1973 and a couple other years, I believe. So eruptive activity is very capable and possible out here across the Upper East Rift Zone, as well as a magma intrusion off to the East Rift Zone further out here across this area. So right now we're at a standstill. We're at a point where we're just waiting. We're watching things, and any minute, any day, anything can happen at any time right now in terms of the extreme inflation that's going on out here across this area. And it's a waiting game, folks. It's just a waiting game. A little bit of activity off here across the crater area. These are very shallow earthquakes, but no signs of an eruption yet. Earthquake activity down here around the Pahala area, very typical. The rest of the globe here, look at the western areas of the Pacific Plate have gone awfully quiet, man. There's still a lot of fireworks going on out here around me. My poor dog is not loving this. I don't think any dog is. I haven't heard any dogs barking around the neighborhood right now. Normally we've got a few dogs barking, but goodness, not a peep, squeak, or anything going on from those dogs. There is a handful of smaller quakes here across the Japan area, a couple fours, and very shallow earthquake activity around the Tonga area, Vanuatu region. And, that is common because we have seen a lot of deeper activity here recently. So the surface areas along the plate boundaries are getting hit with some adjustment going on. 3.0, 3.3 North Island, New Zealand, it looks like. No major activity there to discuss for now, though. Also got mentioned about, Mount Etna, right? Mount Etna has, oh man, I don't know how many times it has erupted, right? I don't really cover things that are very common, right? Because Mount Etna is a volcano there in Italy. In fact, it's Italy's tallest and most active volcano. It erupts almost every year and can actually sometimes erupt multiple times in a month. It's active here in the last 24 hours. I shared it on my Facebook page, but it's not something of major geological activity because it's so common. It happens so much out there. Now, if we're talking about something like Kilauea volcano, Iceland, things like that don't happen very often. They happen every couple months or so, maybe every couple years, but things that are always erupting out here, Mount Etna, Indonesia Islands, volcanoes, I try not to focus too much on that because that will take off a lot of the time here from the update. So if anything changes, obviously, major increasing activity at Mount Etna, I would cover it. But it's always popping off, folks. Always popping off. It's just like California, always seeing earthquake activity, right? But we look for independent, separate little regions that may show a major swarm or something of unusual activity. But I never cover, okay, guys, we got a major swarm going on here along the San Jacinto Fault Zone. Well, there is no major swarm. This is very typical earthquake activity on any given day. We got 38 earthquakes in Southern California today, 24 hours. One may say, wow, that's a lot of earthquake activity. Well, let's bring this up last 30 days, okay? 822 earthquakes here of various magnitudes in the last 30 days. This is always happening out here. It's along a major plate boundary. San Andreas Fault, not so much right there, right? If we've seen a lot of activity along here, I'd be a little suspicious. But the secondary fault systems here, the Elsinore and the San Jacinto Fault Zone, these take up a lot of the strain here associated between the two major plates here, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. So always seeing earthquake activity out here. It's nothing new. Mount Etna, always seeing volcanic activity. Nothing new. Space weather. Anything major to chat about here? Doesn't look like it. Things pretty steady across the board here. 5% chance for an X flare. I don't know why it's still stuck at 5%, but it is. M flare at 35. C flare around 99% chance. So let's see what we got here for the latest magnetogram image of all of these sunspots. You guys hear that? Can you guys hear that? Listen very closely. There's a little bit of silence out there, right? That is because it's very quiet out there on the sun. There's a few sunspots out here, but if you twisted my arm out here and you made me pick a sunspot to watch, well, I would probably be quiet until you twisted my arm even further. There's not a whole lot of complexity out there with those sunspots, to be honest. So I don't see anything of noteworthy value whatsoever. A look at the far side area. We do have these. Remember, you guys, week or so back, 3716, 3713, 3712. These are all former sunspots here. There was 3 of them. They were growing. 3713, 3712. Looks like they have grown further. They're approaching the eastern limb here, so they will be visible here in the coming days. A couple days or so. We should get a better perspective of what's going on here with this sunspot group once it comes around the eastern limb. But I think this is going to be a very active region. It does look pretty, not complex, but broad in terms of sunspot coverage out here on the far side of the sun. So, even though it's quiet right now, we do have 3713, 3712 here to watch as we head into the next couple weeks. All right, National Hurricane Center. What's going on out here with Beryl? Right now, Beryl is, let's see here. It does look like it's getting close here to hitting the Mexico area as a hurricane. Excuse me. 115 mile per hour sustained winds. That's a lot better than 160, right? But still pretty strong. There is hurricane warnings up here across the Mexico area in the red, and tropical storm warnings here on the western side here of Mexico. And it is expected to weaken drastically as it heads over land, like most tropical systems do. There's not a there's not a whole lot of moisture out there in Mexico to suck up into the cyclone here. So expecting that to weaken drastically and then potentially kick back up here into the Gulf of Mexico as a hurricane. Uncertain, though, on to how strong this will be. Let's check out a couple different weather models out here for the Beryl area, the Beryl hurricane. The current imagery here shows the Mexico area just about ready to get hit here. There's no defined eye with that hurricane, but it's still hurricane status. And I'm sure these guys are dealing with some very strong tropical conditions out there. Some of these weather models are shifting more northward in terms of the spaghetti-directed models here for Beryl, this hurricane. So heading up into Texas, it looks like. Again, there's a little bit of uncertainty, though, on how strong this is going to be by the time it hits land here. Obviously, here's the drop as it hits land. It is expected to kick up a little bit. Some models forecasting Category 2, maybe Category 1, but excuse me, it's hard to say. Either way, I don't think we're going to have much time for this hurricane to continue to intensify after it gets shredded down here across the Mexico area. Let me bring up the wind gust here, show you guys more discreetly the area of interest. Here it is right now into the Mexico region. As we put this into motion here, you will see that this eventually gets shredded here, and even more so. But as it heads into the Gulf of Mexico, there's a little uncertainty. That still looks like it could be developing, again into a strong hurricane. A lot of warm waters out here. I heard some shark bites out here earlier today, south of the Corpus Christi area as well. A lot of sharks enjoying this warmer water, and unfortunately, humans out there in the water as well. Goodness, I'm not for sure where this cough came from, but let me grab a drink here. So look at that hurricane. Getting a little bit more well-defined circulation there around that center portion of that cyclone. And it's hard to say, folks, exactly how strong it's going to get. It's one of those stages that we need to watch here between right here, where it's at now, just off the coast of Mexico, and after it goes over the land here. That will be a more important player. But if you look at the southern, there's the winds here. They're coming up out of the south. That should steer it over and up. But the thing is, how much stronger will this system be after it gets over land? Definitely a good question, right? All right, folks. I think that's about it. Again, obviously, let me point this out here. We've had a lot of earthquake activity out here across the Explorer Plate. This is a divergent boundary, separation of the seafloor. And I told you guys this morning, watch this area over here for further earthquake activity. Even though we didn't see further earthquake activity at the surface levels, the tremor shows us here. Let me show you guys the last day. Just the last day. The tremor activity shows that there's elevated pressure out here against that region. The earthquake activity is happening right about here. Divergent zone, increasing pressure here along the northern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, the Vancouver Island range. So this just popped up out of the blue following all this earthquake activity. So no doubt, if there's tremor occurring down into the subduction zone here, that means increasing pressure out here across the general area. And it can't be any more clear than that. All these earthquakes are contributing to further strain out here against this area. And the tremor doesn't lie. It's right there. And we didn't see it all last week at all. In fact, I'm trying to think if we've seen anything in the last month. Not in that area. Further up north, further inland, but specifically this area is today. So definitely there's something going on out here across the Cascadia. And in general across this entire region here of the Cascadia subduction zone. So that's something we got to watch out here. Again, the last earthquake, 4.4 out here in the Juan de Fuca Ridge, divergent boundary out here. We'll continue to watch that. The largest earthquake so far is a 5.7, but there's really no main quake out here right now. It's just a bunch of earthquake activity, a lot of unsettled conditions going on, a lot of pressure movement, and we'll continue to keep an eye here along the Cascadia northern end, and we'll catch you guys back out here tomorrow morning, hopefully after some sleep. We got a lot of fireworks going on still out here in Northern California, and my dog is not sleeping inside tonight. He's not going to, even though he thinks he might. Well, it's not going to happen. So I got to figure something out here for him. He doesn't like the fireworks at all. I don't think any dogs like fireworks out here, but I might make him a little area in the garage. That way he can be safe and sound and not have to worry about stuff. But if he were to sleep inside, I wouldn't even get any sleep. He'd be jumping in the bed here with me and missing Mimi's, and that would not be a good night. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Have yourself a good night. We'll catch you guys back out here in the morning. Make sure you guys subscribe. Please like this video. If you click that thumbs up button, that helps us out a lot. In fact, hitting that thumbs up button is almost as helpful and beneficial as making a donation here to this channel. So we appreciate it. We'll catch you guys back out here for the Friday morning update. Friday, we made it. It's 11:11 p.m. California time, folks. Make your wish. Have a good night.